Hi there. S- Business Guru back with my follow-up video to the cash flow video I recorded that went a little bit over my usual time. I try to keep most of my videos to around 20 minutes because my camera usually cuts the files into multiple files after that time. Hopefully it didn't do that with this last one. If it did, I'm going to have to go back and reshoot that video. Um, So I was talking about how you can put distance between payments that you have to make in your business in order to provide a smoother cash flow system. Another way you can do it is obviously to not extend credit to your customers or to restrict credit to certain limits so that you can ensure the money comes in as quickly as possible. The problem when you extend credit to people is you've introduced a great deal of uncertainty as to when you're going to get paid. And that will have very significant cash flow implications for you. Um, for instance, in my business, I don't extend credit. I require people to pay me when the invoice is issued. And because my auction is every single week, I basically expect to get paid that week. I do have a couple of customers who take a little bit longer, but it's just a couple, and it's not significant in relation to my total revenue. So typically, what I'm able to do each week is if I add up the total of what my sales are, say I sell, let's just say for example, I sell $3,000 a week. Well, I know I'm going to get that money that week, more or less. And if I don't, there's going to be an invoice from a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to collect from one of the slow payers. And so it's going to make up for whatever I didn't collect this week. And so overall, my cash flow is still going to be whatever I calculated the sales to be. So what I typically do is the first thing I do is I take Shopify's amount out. So I know they're going to take 25%. So I calculate that I get to keep 75% of whatever I sold. Then I look forward. I know I've got to make a wage payment at the end of the week, so I deduct the wages off. And that amount of money is what I have left to put towards other bills, whether it's suppliers, whether it's the government, whether it's money I need to take out for groceries and expenses. And so typically what I'll do is I'll look and see which obligations do I have that are coming up that week that I have to pay, and those will get the money allocated to them first. Then if I have any money left over, I will look and see if I need anything personally. Do I have enough groceries? Is the car payment made and the mortgage payment up to date? Do I need to make a credit card payment? Because right now I have a lot of credit card debts and lines of credit and various other obligations. And if all of that's met, then I can begin looking at maybe making some payments to consigners. Like I said, my cash flow system has been not a very good one. And the primary reason for that is not because I'm mismanaging it. I'm actually managing my cash flows extremely well. If I had not managed them as well as I have, I would have gone out of business a long time ago. No, I'm doing a very good job managing it, but there are very serious restrictions on what I'm able to do. And it's caused me to not be able to grow as quickly as I'd like. And it's put me in a very tough position. So I decided about 6 months ago that something needed to change, that this wasn't going to be sustainable, particularly because I didn't feel like I was paying out my consigners fast enough. I was accumulating debts to consigners, and I wasn't generating enough cash flow from operations to make regular payments to them. And I was dependent on Shopify's capital advances to make payments to people, which was fine, except that I'm only getting the advances once every 6 to 8 months, and that's a long time to make people wait for money. So I embarked 6 months ago to try and uh, attract some investment capital so that I could take out um, many of my debts that were choking my cash flow and roll all of them essentially into new debts to investors. In my mind, this is a very sound strategy, and this was something that it to me shouldn't have been difficult to do. But I ran up against a reality, which goes back to what I talked about in my last video, which is that most investors, they do not want to lend you money to pay back old debts. They aren't willing to do that. They are only willing to invest in a business if the business is expanding, using the money that's raised to grow the business and make it even bigger than it already is. Does that make sense? Yes. I mean, is it necessarily risky to an investor that you're merely taking the money and solidifying and optimizing your capital structure? No. I mean, it should be just as sound a strategy to an investor as expanding the business. And in fact, it's actually more sound. But to an investor, because the public typically doesn't understand the difference between cash flow and profitability, they look at the fact that I had all these debts as an indication that I was unsuccessful and risky, and they just didn't want to invest in it. So I realized that if I wanted to change this and redesign my cash flow system and get back into the red, where I have more than enough cash flow to cover all of my bills as they come due without me having to partially pay people or juggle, I needed to actually raise capital from another source personally. And there's really only two things I had open to me to do that. One option was that I shutter the business, or I significantly curtail the amount of business. So I cut the auction back to, say, half of what it normally is. I train Will and Josh, those are my two employees, to be able to handle the lotting, the scanning, the descriptions for half of the items that I normally sell. Why half? Well, because they're not particularly experienced in matters of describing and grading stamps, and it would take them, there's a big learning curve there, and it would take them a long time to learn it. And therefore, they would need to have the majority of their week open to learning and not really just hit the ground running lotting. So they would only be able to do maybe half of the lots that I'm selling. In fact, it probably would be even lower than that initially. It'd probably be a quarter. So it'd be a significant curtailment in revenue. And then I go back into accounting as a type of mercenary accountant, a contractor. And I bill, $180 to $200 an hour for my time doing supervising of audits and review engagements and file review for firms. I mean, that's if I could land a gig like that, it's pretty lucrative, and I could make in a 6 week period, I could make $20,000 or $30,000. But I have to weigh that against how much revenue I'm going to lose from curtailing the auction and cutting it back. If the auction's typically doing $3,000 to $4,000 a week, I could be giving up, you know, in a 6-week period, I could be giving up $10,000 or $12,000. So, you know, if I'm only making 20 in a 6-week period, well, I've given up 12. I'm only 8 ahead. It's a number, and it's a bit of money, and it's helpful, but it's not going to be worthwhile for just a 6-week period. I would have to be out of commission probably for 6 months to 8 months, really, to accumulate enough money to do what I need to do. Actually, it would be even longer than that. And the only real advantage to that type of approach is that I would be training my guys to take on more responsibility, and I'd have a better indication of how truly capable and willing they are to do that. But the big disadvantage is that by taking my foot off the gas of the business, it's going to lose a lot of momentum. There's going to be a lot of weakening of potential new customer relationships, and older relationships that I have because I'm not involved in the business. And that's going to become apparent just in terms of the quality of the descriptions and the type of service that's being provided, the answers to emails that come in, and so on and so forth. Because if I do that kind of contract work, I have to be focused 100% on what the client needs that's paying me. So I can't do that and focus on my business. So I'm going to lose an awful lot of momentum. Now, I did this type of thing when I was first setting the business up after leaving eBay. And back then, before I had any real sales, before I had a large customer following, that made a great deal of sense because there was little to no opportunity cost involved in doing that. I've got my cat here. This is where I introduce you to one of the members of my cat family. This is Jack. And Jack has just woken up from his morning nap. He typically naps in a little cat bed in the corner there. And whenever he gets up, he comes and he stands beside me and he stretches out and he demands my attention. So that's what he was doing just now. And if I don't give it to him, he starts knocking things off of the surfaces. No, it looks like he wants some more. So I'm going to grab him here, just keep him on my lap for the duration of this video, and hopefully he won't scratch me or bite me in the interim. So, you know, that type of approach works extremely well when you don't have an opportunity cost of having a client base that has expectations of you. The second option I had to get capital then would be putting a new mortgage on my home. I bought this house, like I said, I think in one of my videos, with my partner 10 years ago. We paid $132 for it. We managed to put some equity in at that time. We've made good payments on the mortgage by having a bi-weekly payment, and we've gotten the mortgage down to just under $66,000. In the meantime, after COVID, property values in St. John rose dramatically, so that the house is now worth between $330,000 and $350,000. And so, you know, I can access, on a private mortgage, I can access up to 80% of the home's value. So if it's $350,000, I can get up to $280,000 out, and then I've got to pay out the mortgage. So $280,000 minus $66,000 is $214,000. So I mean, there's going to be lawyers' fees and lenders' fees and brokers' fees in there. So let's just say I get out $200,000. Well, now, that puts me in a position to pay out all of the debts that I have that are choking the cash flow. So right now, for instance, I have Shopify I owe just over $40,000 too. And so when I pay that out, the 25% withholding on my sales just disappears overnight. So I'm paying them roughly $1,000 a week. That goes away. Next, I have about $80,000 personally outside the business in lines of credit and credit cards that are all maxed out. So if I pay all of those off fully, I reduce my monthly minimum payments by around $1,100, I think I calculated. And those just disappear. So after this is all done, now of course the mortgage payment, the new mortgage payment will be about $1,000 more than what I'm paying now. So effectively what I've done is I've swapped out the minimum payments on all my lines and credit cards for a new mortgage, but then I've also been able to take out Shopify, and I'm able to free up close to $4,000 of cash flow in my business every month. And I'm also going to be able, with those funds, to pay various consignors and suppliers and other people that I owe money to. And I'm going to be able to start up what I call a sinking fund to accumulate the monies each month to pay out the rest of the consignors that I have debts to. So I can come up with a coherent, manageable, workable plan to get these people paid. Now that's part of my cash flow system. Okay, the average business person who's in a position that I've been in where they've been starving for cash for so long, their temptation will be to take all of this money and pay everybody out right away. And that could prove to be a mistake because it could put you back in the same position that you were in before. It's better to manage everybody's expectations. The total repayment option might work if you have enough cash to pay absolutely everybody out and leave a cushion and not have to play favorites amongst consignors. But in a situation where I don't have enough money to pay everybody out, which is the case here, then it's better for me to make a pro rata payment to everybody based on how much of their share of the extra money that I have, and then to put them on a monthly or a quarterly plan to treat everybody equally and fairly. And that also allows me to accumulate that $4,000 cash flow every month, and I can then start expanding the business and buying more inventory and better stamps, which will only improve my cash flow position. Now, I'm able to do that. There's a couple of caveats here, and I need to put them in here because this is a strategy that you should only follow in the situation like the one that I have, which is that I've got a very strong client base, and I know that my client base is not fully utilized. And by that I mean I haven't hit the limit on what my sales can be based on who my customers are. And the way I know that is that every single time I put more value into my auction in terms of catalog value, every time I do that, my sales go up. Oh, just one sec here. I gotta grab Jack. Come on, Jack. Sorry about that. I've got to get him out of here because he's starting to grab my covers, and he does that when I don't give him the attention he wants. So anyway, what I'm saying is that I haven't hit the limit on what I can sell based on who my customers are, because every time I put more value into the auction, I sell more, and the sales go up proportionate to the value that's gone into the auction. If I'd hit the limit, what you would see is a leveling off of sales or a reduction in the amounts for each item. and that hasn't happened. So that's number one. And I've got a profitable operation that would be sustainable by itself if the debt wasn't present. Okay, so mortgaging my house to pay that off makes sense. But if you're running your business and you don't have a profitable operation just yet, like if you're almost but not quite there, don't do this. Because all that will happen is that you will just run up new debts again, and you'll then be in a position where you're back to having a lower cash flow and high debt, except now you've got no cushion, no fallback, no equity to fall back on. So I think that concludes what I've done here, or what I'm about to do. The mortgage commitment came in yesterday, and so now I'm just waiting for it to close and to get my hands on the money so I can make the payments and get back into a position of healthy cash flow, or I should say into that position for the first time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hang in there.